Do players always need a campaign, a one-shot, or an adventure tailored to them and created specially by you? Does it need to be built around, their backstories, made up in your mind, special? After all, isn't that one of the coolest parts about D&D? Imagination, SpongeBob style, with the rainbow and everything. I feel like I'm not alone in this feeling. Because it's common for everyone to kind of look around, and despite how much work it takes, or looking at all that's already pre-written out there, to kind of feel like, you know what? I think I need to be like homebrewing this if I'm a good DM, right? Even if it's sometimes stressful or new, or leads to burnout from some DMs when they constantly have to come up with whatever's next. And so I guess that's the question that I'm talking about today. Is something better because it's custom, because it's homebrewed? Is it necessary for a good game of D&D? We're going to talk about it. But first, welcome to How to Be a Better DM. I'm Tanner Wayland, and this is the show for DMs who love being creative, but also feel overwhelmed with the weight of creation. Today we are examining a basic premise of D&D and challenging the base assumption about the need to create new worlds, new encounters, and custom everything for a game that feels like it has both too much pre-made content and yet not enough to fill the pit of expectations that every DM spends time in. So let's hear some arguments both for and against creating custom homebrewed things for your campaigns. And honestly, I'm hoping that you, while I'm talking about this, come up with some of your own, because this really is an experiment in challenging your base assumptions. So for homebrew, number one, players feel heard and they feel special. When you are creating this world that's based around a whole country, nation, faction of people is based around one of your players' backstories, it feels pretty sick, right? Like it feels like there's just so much potential for them and they feel just so special. But in the end, it's like, well, couldn't you kind of give them some options and let them fit within the pre-existing framework? And more importantly, isn't it so much less about, hey, I've bent over backwards for you and the character you created, and rather it's more about, hey, I'm listening to you, I am rolling with the punches, I'm yes-anding, and of course I'm adding stuff in, or I'm working what you came up with into this already rich world. But to be fair, I think what players really do feel very, like they're collaborators in creation when you do make a world that's all homebrewed and special with them in mind. But against homebrew, number one, it's so much work. And yeah, there's some DMs who I envy, who are able to like just prepare enough to go off of without doing volumes. And that's wonderful. And I think that that's a great skill. But even so, it's still work. And it's still you going through all those steps, and you always worry that maybe you're doing it wrong. Maybe you're like, oh, I'm trying to create this really cool class for this player who just wants a wholly unique class because the current classes and subclasses don't quite fit what they're looking for. And that's really cool. That's really awesome. Even if you're just creating an ability for them, or a spell, like a custom spell, it doesn't change the fact that you kind of wonder, it's like, oh man, this is a lot of work. Will it actually pay off? Will they like it? Will they, play this character and then be like, it's just not very exciting, which of course would hurt after all the time you spent creating that class, or that country in the world, or whatever else, and the players just don't engage. That's always a risk. Now, for homebrew, number two, you have a real sense of ownership and pride as a DM in creating things by yourself. I know that the game isn't about like you feeling super cool because you'd made something, but that is an aspect, right? Especially in an age when everything feels a little impersonal, especially automated and, generated in the case of AI and so much else. Uh, it's wonderful to have something that's like wholly your efforts. And there's nothing like creating a world, but an item, an encounter, or anything by yourself, and then seeing like, hey, they really like this. I really like this. That's absolutely a big pro to homebrew. Now, against homebrew number 2, there's there's so much excellent content out there to experience, and you'd be missing out. Now, I say this understanding that it's like, yeah, I mean, but what makes other people's content better than yours? Inherently nothing. But there is some really great content out there that other people have created. And frankly, as an avid reader, video game player, movie watcher, I enjoy experiencing what people have created and what they put their incredibly smart and thoughtful minds into. And so if you never give yourself the chance to experience that, or if you've only ever been a homebrew type, game group, then that's something you're certainly missing out on. But on the other side again, homebrew, if you're for homebrew, you're going to feel like each adventure is wholly unique. Different from the thousands of dungeons, Tolkien-esque fantasy, and everything else that you've seen around you, or in actual plays. And that's really cool. It's cool that you can have an adventure that's not only unique because you created it, but it has specific elements that other people just haven't done before, at least that you're aware of, right? Like, I know there's a lot of different podcasts where actual plays, where they take a basic D&D premise and then they riff on it in very special ways. And I think that's really cool. And it's something that you get when you are homebrewing everything. But against homebrewing, number 3, the fundamentals of a good adventure, including what makes it unique, is usually centered around your players, their actions, and your interactions with them, rather than any specific world building or plot points or anything that you create. Because that's kind of what I want to get at here. It's if you're worried about, creativity equals better, that's not necessarily the case. There are reasons to be creative in that way, where you're creating everything from whole cloth. There are good reasons. But if it's just like, it won't be a good adventure without me doing that's not true. As we talked about in a lot of our episodes, a good adventure is much more about, the different pillars of your game style, the storytelling, the player management, the gameplay, everything like that. If you can focus on that, you can make any kind of adventure, even one that has been done to death, like, Curse of Strahd, or even just like any of the classic D&D like realms and campaign settings. You can totally do one of those things and just fall in love with it. Just fall in love with the existing world and make it your own still, right? But homebrew, I mean, there's a reason why it's such a big part of D&D. It's because it's really fun, and it's very unique, and it's beautiful, and it gives you a special kind of experience. But it's not the only kind of experience. And so that, just ending here, my challenge to you is consider what you have mostly done in the past. Are you mostly a pre-written type person? Then for this next adventure or one-shot or whatever, make it a homebrewed adventure if you've only ever done pre-written. If, on the other hand, you've only ever pushed yourself to do homebrew, and that's been natural because you're like, I love creating adventures and I always do this, then consider looking at some pre-written adventure settings or some pre-written encounters to sprinkle into your current homebrew game. Maybe even a one-shot here or there, or a one-shot kind of branching adventure for your current party that is based off of something that was pre-written. I think it'll give you some great ideas, and also it'll give you a chance to experience both sides of the DMing creativity spectrum. And I hope that when you take this challenge and you actually apply it, that you find it to be a really interesting experience, because I believe it will be. But enough about that. I hope that you have a fun time doing it, and until next time, let's roll initiative.